purpose of today's meeting is not to decide who's responsible. The purpose of today's meeting is not to show how outraged we are by some of the things that have happened. Rather, today's meeting is to get information. And I hope that we can keep the conversation civil and very, very much to the point and the facts, and get those discussed so that we walk out of here with a better understanding of what we need to do. I'd like to first introduce Steve Hirakawa.
Thank you. Aloha and welcome to Haas. I just wanted to make a distinction here that Haas is a state school, but it operates from 7 in the morning to 3:30 in the afternoon, and Monday through Friday. So after hours and weekends, this event is sponsored by Arts and Science Center, and it's a 501c3. It supports the school. Gil Clark right there is the chairman. She's graciously let Puno Pono Alliance use this for the format. So couple housekeeping things is the bathrooms are on that patio right behind me, and I'm going to turn it over to Tom. So anyway, be respectful and let's have a good meeting. Thank you.
Right on, Steve. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, John.
The first thing I would like to do is show you a few slides that I put together. PPA currently has a list of 82 people that believe that they may have been affected by the geothermal toxic release on the 7th of August. Of those 82, 36 of them have a video, an interview, or a written testimony associated with it. The rest of it just have screening sheets and names and numbers. So what you're going to see is based on the 36 that have been processed up to this point. Severe lethargy is defined as not being able to control when you go to sleep, or no one being able to wake you up after you fall asleep. That's the definition of severe lethargy. Sometimes in H2S circles, there is discussion of knockdowns, but rather than assume a cause, what we have done is define severe lethargy. Lethargy is where there is great trouble staying awake, that people can be awakened and people let me stop there. If, in both cases, if they woke up rested and feeling good, we didn't count it. Because if they feel good, then maybe the reason they went to sleep is because they were really tired. But they would feel better when they woke up if that were the case. Mental fog is, I think all of us have friends that let us understand what mental fog is. That's people having trouble focusing on what is happening, or having trouble putting ideas together and communicating those ideas. Cardiovascular includes a whole bunch of things associated with the heart, including high blood pressure, rapid heartbeat, irregular heartbeat, chest pain. Respiratory includes sore throat. It includes sinus. It includes shortness of breath. It includes anything associated with the respiratory system. Headache is self-explanatory. Eyes is trouble with the vision or irritation of the eyes. Both, we've had cases of each. Skin is rashes, blisters, something about the skin that is not good. And nausea is the inability to eat because of an upset stomach, including vomiting and others. As you can see, if you balance numbers, not everybody had every symptom, and nobody had all the symptoms, but you see a spread of what the symptoms were. This is a map. Those yellow stars, or yellow diamonds, are the places on the map where people experience serious lethargy. This is the Y. This is PGV. This is Lani Puna Gardens. This is along Pohiki Road. And this is, most of these are in the low side of Leilani. And when I say low, I'm talking about the part that has a lower elevation. And those are where the serious lethargy occurred. The pink or the red diamonds are where lethargy occurred. And as you can see, the pattern broadens out a little bit. We have people, one, he's right across the road here. He lives right across that road right there. We have one all the way out towards Kapoho. These three right here are right about here on the map. But as you see, as we go to lethargy, the map spreads out a little bit, and the effects are a little more widespread. I thought it would be useful at this point I'm going to raise this screen, or ask Steve to. He won't let me play with it. I would like to introduce and invite our guests up. As soon as they are seated up front, they will be given an opportunity. Actually, the first thing I'm going to do is ask members of the audience who have had experiences and expressed their willingness to speak about it briefly, to tell their story and explain what happened. Yes, sir.
What are the ages?
The ages go all the way from children to, I think the oldest guy was 68. So it's a broad range of ages. And as you notice, some of the clusters, a lot of the people were in the same house. So that needs to be understood as well. So after I get the guests up here, the guests will be given an opportunity to ask the people in the audience questions if they so desire. First guest is Mike Colacchini, and Mike has been the liaison. He's been a plant manager at PGV, and he's been the liaison for the community from PGV for as long as I've been here. I've grown to respect him and to listen closely to what he says. And so Mike will explain things from PGV's point of view. I would like to introduce Jay Ignacio, who's the, is it the president or chief executive officer? President of Hawaiian Electric Light Company, and will represent the utility and explain to us what happened with the utilities during the time. John Praird. Is John here? Oh, there's John. John Praird works for the Emergency Response Unit at the Department of Health. So those of you that have heard my speak publicly before about the Department of Health never having a representative, that is no longer true. John is a representative from the Department of Health. You're welcome here. And Daryl Oliveri, I'll just say Daryl. Daryl is the Civil Defense Administrator and is the guy that runs the everyday plans of the civil defense and works with the mayor in emergencies to decide what's happening. Is Dwayne Canoe here? The planning department was invited, but apparently Dwayne was not able to make it. Barb Cuttins has pieces of paper. If you would like to ask questions, please write those questions down on a piece of paper, and Bob Patrici will ask those questions of the panel later during the presentation. Right now, I would like to open things up to Mike and have Mike tell his story of what happened to him on the night of August 7th.
I appreciate you guys coming to listen and finally feel like something that people are taking us seriously. Thank you for being here, and at least we feel like we're being taken seriously. It started with the night of the storm. I live on Ho'okupu Street in the bottom of Leilani. There wasn't much wind yet. Every once in a while a gust, and then we heard the jet engine going off. And our doors were open because we were trying to enjoy the storm. We went outside to hear what the noise was and see, maybe that was the storm picking up. And no, it was coming from only one direction, the direction of the plant. So we immediately called 911, or nearly immediately, and they said, yeah, we know about the plant, and hung up. And I didn't have any other chance to ask any questions or anything like that. The noise was very loud still, so we're still worried. I tried to call a couple of numbers I had for the PGV and wasn't able to get through. One was just a beep, beep, beep sound, and the other would just rang and rang and rang. So getting a hold of them wasn't an option either. We had about that time, and within that first half hour of the noise going off, we smelt it pretty strongly. We both went outside and were like, wow, curious, not knowing, what's going on. And so we smelt the rotten eggs and the sulfur type smell or whatever it is. Got some pretty good whiffs at it, I guess. I guess it wasn't the smartest thing to do. From there, we called 911 again and asked. I specifically asked, should we evacuate? And they asked us to put the phone down, asked somebody else, and they said, no need to evacuate. About 5 minutes after smelling the smell, or within the 5 minutes, we immediately started getting like a low pressure type of headache and scratchiness in the throat and a heaviness in the chest. Then I saw on Facebook a notification from the mayor to, if you're feeling ill effects, then you should evacuate. So we wrapped up we had a couple other people in the household, and grabbed the dog and cat and tried to flee, only to find that the roads were blocked. We ran into the fire department, and they were blocked into Leilani, the lower end of Leilani as well. We tried to go around different ways, and then we passed the fire department again, and at that time I told, I said, listen, what do we do? We're feeling effects, what do we do? And yeah, I'm emotional. I'm remembering back to the night because, I'm trying to take care of the other people in the house. And they're, like the older lady that isn't on the chart, she was panicked. And she smelt it very strongly as well. So we couldn't evacuate, so we go and we head back. They said, you have to go back to your house and close the doors and windows, and that's it. There's nothing else for you to do. So we head back, basically a mile back towards the plant. So honestly, a lot of us were concerned that, we might die heading back a mile towards the plant. Immediately beyond getting home, this raspiness is actually still effects from the sore throat, which is almost gone, 95% better now. But that just went away in the last couple of days. So immediately upon getting home, I'll close the windows. I'm running around trying to get everybody settled down. The old lady in the home is saying, "Mike, what are we going to do?" I'm saying, we gotta bear down. That's all we can do. I really feel bad about that. I mean, that she had no other place to go to. Immediately we started to put our bed, some blankets down in the closet, a walk-in closet, so that we could be further away from the windows or whatever. And as I put the bed together, it wasn't within 3 minutes or even a minute, and all of a sudden I was out. And then I was out for 12 hours. Wow. Megan, my partner, tried to wake me during the night. She couldn't wake me. She tried to shake me a little bit. Usually I'm a light sleeper. She tried to shake me. She tried to shine a flashlight in my eyes. She looked at my eyes and said that I kind of looked dead because my eyes were red and puffy and I wasn't waking up. After I woke up the next morning, it took a while to kind of feel ungroggy in my head. The headache was still there, the heaviness in the chest, and feeling like I needed to cough, but there wasn't any cough really there, just in there. The cough developed a little bit more later. The next day, we were trapped in Leilani for the whole day. The next day after that, we were able to get out of Leilani, but I was in the middle of making sure that the household had gas and everything else that we needed to bear down for who knows how long we were going to be without electricity and phone and everything else, because there was nothing, no internet, nothing. The third day, I think it was Sunday, I felt a rash, I had rosacea or whatever redness around my skin. I felt the heat in there. Other people said that I looked blotchy in the face. But that Sunday, something felt more serious was happening. I felt tingling in my arms. The forearms down a little bit to the fingers, and then intermittently on my face. So I decided I better get to see somebody. I went to the urgent care first in Pahoa, and he said that there was nothing that they could do there. You have to go to the emergency room. So then I went to the emergency room, where they did a full run-up, gave me oxygen first thing, tested my blood oxygen levels, and all these other things. They released me saying that there's no treatment for this type of gas, but these are all the symptoms that are related to it. And there's nothing that they can test for 3 days later to prove that there's the gas, that I've been affected by the gas. Just that those were the symptoms of it. The cough and the heavy chest lasted for the full 2 weeks. The heavy chest. In the last week, it's pretty much started to feel better. I think it's been like 3 weeks now, something like that. The tingling only was in there for a couple of days. The headache was off and on for, I don't know, it got less over 2 weeks. I think that's the story. I put it on the internet. If I could ask a couple of things.
Let's wait until after they give me the I'd like to thank Mike very much for his testimony. There are other people here who have similar stories. There's microphones on the table, and at this point, any of the panel members that would like, there's a period here that you can ask questions of the people that were affected out in the audience and get their answers.
Yeah, I just had a question, maybe just show of hands. Is during the event, I realized that at some point everyone lost communications, but maybe for Mike, at what point did you lose like telephone comms? Was it pretty quick?
It was the time that we tried to evacuate, and then by the time we came back, there was no internet, no phone, no nothing. That was about 8:30.
Mike said that he lost communications from the time he was going to evacuate, and when he returned home, there was no communication. He estimates the time at 8:30. Do you have any more?
Thank you.
I'd like to say that the Department of Health is interested in the kind of information you have, and Tom was saying he's put together this map. He was showing us part of that. They're still collecting information. And as people have been calling into the Department of Health, I know we've been trying to gather the same information and map it as well. So this is very useful information, and we're hoping to get the information your group has to look at that and, you know, interpret it and use it to evaluate the incident from a health perspective. As you know, since the power went out, there was no monitoring during that period. There is no data, virtually no data. There was some gathered at the plant right during that time period, and I can talk about that a little bit, what we know of that data, but very little data. All the formal monitoring stations, the power was out, they were down. So there is simply a lack of information. So this symptom information that you're gathering together will be the bulk of information that we'll have to try to interpret what effects may have occurred as a result of it. I imagine the plant, Mike can speak to that, the plant may be doing some theoretical estimates of what could have been emitted during that time period, so some estimates could be looked at as well. But these symptom reports will be important for ultimately interpreting the whole situation and what effects are as a result of that.
Thank you, John. Mike or Jay, do you have any questions, sir?
Not specifically a question, but I just wanted to say hello to Mike, because he and I did speak a time or so, and I wanted to say thanks for sharing your experience. And we did talk about some other aspects, options and whatnot, and I just wanted to say thanks to Mike for reaching out. And thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to give testimony of that evening, and I'm going to read it, my text messages to my buddy who lived right down the street that evening, because I was affected by this blowout as well. If that'll be okay.
Have you given any of this to any of us before?
Yes, you have a verbal testimony of my health professional.
What's your name?
Greg Adams.
Greg.
At a farm across the street on Route 132.
Yeah, I got it. I know your name. I just hadn't mentioned. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Could I ask you to limit it to no more than 5 minutes?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thanks.
Not a problem.
Here, are you going to take him a mic, Steve?
I just want to give you guys a real-time texting, and I'm gonna edit the expletives out of this, okay? Fine. Okay,
Thank you.
yeah.
You want the real stuff.
Okay, just bear with me, please. This is my buddy Harold. He lives below the papaya farm. He's only farm relics. He's below that. Okay, so and I just want to give you a timeline on this so that you guys are aware of the timeline. Just bear with me here. Doing this. Okay, just bear with me. This is 7/28, August 7th. I'm texting my buddy Harold down the block. He's about a mile marker 4.5 on Route 132. I said, geothermal just blew. Wow, sounds like thunder. Called 911, and they said it's a controlled release. His response was, sure it is. I replied to him, they said not to worry, but what about that funny taste in my mouth? Yep, better time to off-gas all the deadly toxins in a hurricane. I'm kind of getting used to it. I think I'll be able to sleep no problem. It's kind of like sleeping on a tarmac. Jet engine sound. It hasn't stopped, but I'm looking on the bright side. Maybe we're just getting gassed. What is this, blank Germany? B97 FM is already airing interviews with residents near Geothermal complaining of illness from tonight's toxins release. I'm calling. Try listen. Okay, just bear with me. And then at that point, okay, so that's 8:08. That's 8:25. Phone lines went dead. So basically, I'm talking to him for an hour while the jet engines, and by the way, they're not jet engines, they're rocket engines going off right across the street. I want to say something to you guys right out of the gate. I've been pro geothermal technology. I brought my property in 2002. I'm right across the street from you guys. I got no problem. You make banging noises at night, hey, no worries, okay, or whatever, you guys doing your thing. On August 7th, at 7:38, you guys gassed me. Period. Period. What are the health effects? The health effects were headache, nausea, eye irritation, didn't feel good at all. I was gassed. And that's pretty much all I gotta say. I just wanted to give you a timeline and what happened during the meeting. So I'm
Thanks, Greg, appreciate it. Okay, we're now going to turn the focus from the health effects. Sophia?
I'm just wondering if you want to do the testimony if you have to, or are we done?
If we get time later on, the answer is yes. But I want to give these gentlemen a chance. It's important that we understand they've come out here to explain what happened from their points of view. And it's very, very important that we understand it.
Tom, could you at least tell them that she was one of the people that was,
Or could you ask for a show of hands and who has a similar story to those two stories?
Could you raise your hand if you have a similar story to those two stories? And again, I remind all of you, if you raised your hand and you haven't talked to Laura yet, please do. Unless you have in the past.
Where's Lori?
she's outside there.
Laura, could you step in for a second?
She's right up that table.
I'm right here.
And Laura's taking testimonies, is that correct?
She's getting names and Laura's is getting the information. Some people may give testimony today, but if you saw the sheet, we haven't even done half of it yet. We have twice as many names. Carrie Marks is also here to give testimony, to take video testimony for anyone that's interested. Now we'd like to shift from talking about what happened in the community and what happened in the community to talk about the operational issue of what happened at the plant. The plant was left in operation despite hurricane warnings, and at least my personal opinion, that it was a clear decision that it should have been shut down. It was foreseeable, and in fact is part of the emergency procedures. This is PG&E's emergency procedures. They actually say that the plant will be protected by the emergency steam relief system. One of the interesting things that happened is that the emergency steam relief system lifted, and I've asked Mike, he can elaborate, I've asked why it took them so much longer to get it reset this time than other times, and he said there were problems with power, in that more electrical power they used to run the plant was not available. Sometime during the time after the load tripped and the relief started lifting, a 6-inch relief valve started lifting. This 6-inch relief valve is interesting in that it's unabated flow. That means that the full amount of hydrogen sulfide that's in the geothermal fluid is released to the air. Now, I don't think that there's a complete consensus of how long that unabated flow continued, but there was flow from that valve until I think it was 2116. Is that time right, Mike? About 2116. During the time that valve was flowing, and I personally believe it probably was flowing the whole time based on the reconstruction of the events. The question is what was the flow rate through that valve? I sat down and read something you all should read if you're not suffering from lethargy. That's the American Society of Mechanical Engineers Boiler and Pressure Vessel Specification, Section 8, which talks to the design of relief valves and what their flow capacity would be. I will simply summarize that and say that the flow capacity through a relief has to be high enough that it can ensure that you don't exceed maximum pressure if the maximum amount of inflow into that pressure vessel is realized. The inflow in the pressure vessel in this case is the geothermal production well. So what that means is that if I read it correctly, the pressure relief valve should be sized so that it can relieve the full flow rate of a production well. I did a quick calculation. I couldn't find flow rates. They have some long formulas. There are lots of things I didn't, but I did do a nominal calculation and found that the rate of hydrogen sulfide release from that relief valve, that unabated relief valve, would be approximately equivalent to the hydrogen sulfide release during the blowout in 1991 at an hourly rate. If that is in fact the case, and I think it is, because both the design criteria I stated and the calculations I did said that it might be, we could be talking about this incident could possibly be the biggest release of hydrogen sulfide since the blowout. Of course, this incident lasted an hour, or an hour and 50 minutes, and the blowout lasted 31 hours. So in that case, the blowout's much worse. But for that hour, the amount of hydrogen sulfide may have been about the same. We'll have to wait until the PGV does its calculations, the independent engineering firms go through their calculations, and the Department of Health reviews it and approves it. At that point, we'll have a more accurate picture of how much hydrogen sulfide was released. It is interesting to note that the Deputy Director for the Department of Health, before even the roads were open, and then again about 2 weeks later, made statements saying that there were no health effects from this release, even though he didn't know how much was released. Part of what he apparently based that on, and I'm reading newspapers now. I didn't listen to Mr. Gill himself, but part of what he based that on was apparently a belief that wind speeds during the release were extremely high, in the neighborhood of 50 to 75 miles an hour. However, reviewing all the data that's available, the wind speeds at 7:30 when this occurred, especially down low, were not particularly high. The wind speeds didn't pick up until much later. And so I'm not sure that the assumptions that Mr. Gill made in assuming there could be no health effects were in fact correct assumptions. Because I think it's possible that we had a significant release, and I believe that the wind speeds were much lower than those that he quoted. Now, I'm going to ask each of these gentlemen in turn to discuss what happened from their point of view. I'm going to go through all four of them. I don't want any interruptions or anything. I want them to be able to say what they have to say. And then when that's concluded, hopefully we'll have time to ask some questions. First, because he's the guy that understands the most about what happened at the plant, I'd like to ask Mike to begin and give us a summary of what happened and how he sees it.
Thank you, Tom. Again, thanks for inviting me to share our thoughts and our information what went on August 7th. So first and foremost, I was invited to a meeting with Puna Puna Alliance to discuss the events of the night of the hurricane. And at that meeting, and again tonight, I'd like to share with all of you that the three main points for us staying online, because I know a concern from community folks is, well, Mike, why did you guys stay online when you knew a hurricane was coming? Okay, which is a good question, valid point. And what I shared with the folks at the last meeting that I was invited to is that number one, PGB is committed to delivering energy to HELCO and ultimately to folks that are using electricity. And the key behind that is that there is this pretty serious weather storm that's approaching us. And folks who are using energy need energy to provide and prepare for this storm. In addition to that, folks were interested in what was going on. They wanted to be updated as far as, okay, well, where is it now? Is it a category 1, or is it a tropical storm, or is it even worse? And so our commitment was based on that. And there's other reasons behind that, but that's our primary point on that. In addition to that, knowing that the storm front was coming in, we took extra steps in preparing for this event. We reviewed all of our emergency response procedures. This is not the first storm that we've gone through, okay? So we reviewed our procedures. We made conscious decisions to bring in additional personnel. And in addition to that, we actually made discussions with HELCO and consciously reduced our output. Now that's my second main point. And thirdly, we have full confidence in our plant, and we built our plant to be able to ride through bad weather situations like this. The plant is designed to a level higher than what is required as far as, for example, earthquakes. the plant has equipment that is designed to withstand certain wind conditions. And we are very confident in our plant to be able to fulfill providing energy to folks out there that really need it. You know, and two examples of Oramat's geothermal facilities I can share with you. One of them is in Guatemala that experienced an actual eruption of a volcano. And the other one is in the Philippines when Typhoon Haiyan came by. And I can tell you that both plants were taken offline, but they were some of the first facilities to come back online in helping the folks there recovering with providing energy. You know, so those are the three main points that we made our decision to stay online. And beyond that, just to talk about what exactly happened, Tom, is that please bear in mind that we have a clean air permit, we have a county permit, we have permits with the EPA. In our clean air permit, there are several occasions where the emergency steam release facility is designed to react. One of those situations is when transmission lines are lost. Because what's happening is if the plant is in operation and then in a quick instance you lose transmission lines, you have all these geothermal fluids that are flowing and you have to process it. And this emergency steam release facility is specifically designed to respond to that situation, and that's exactly what occurred. Now, having said that, Department of Health mandates that we need to mitigate the hydrogen sulfide that is in that geothermal steam. And so from the steam release facility, we did use sodium hydroxide and water to chemically treat the hydrogen sulfide that emitted from there. And I just wanted to add on to Tom's comments. We did calculate, our estimated calculation from the emergency steam release facility as far as H2S is 29 pounds. And our estimate from the unabated pressure relief valve was 39 pounds. And if I recall, I believe the KS8 incident was about 180 pounds per hour. So if you use 2 hours for this specific incident on August 7th, we released a total in our estimates 39 pounds unabated and 29 pounds that was the result of the abated system, compared to 180 pounds for 31 hours in 1991. So, you know, I feel like our folks and our system responded exactly like our design system was supposed to. Our employees responded exactly like they were trained to be. And, you know, I can add on to the health comments, which PGB takes very seriously. You know, we had 7 people there that night. Not one reported any health ailments. The following week, we had as many as 70 people there every day. No one reported any health ailments. That's not to say that there may be some, but to this date, no reports of any health ailments. Thanks, Tom.
Jay, would you like to go next?
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm here representing the electric utility, and I know one of the burning questions you have is why would we ask Puna Geothermal Ventures to stay online when we had an approaching hurricane? First of all, I want to say an approaching hurricane is one of, if not the most difficult scenarios that face the electric utility, and if not all of our partners in a response like this. I mean, it's a difficult decision what to do. you got an approaching storm, do we send our personnel out to try and respond to what we expect to occur early? Or do we keep them in? You know, it's a real difficult one. And the real difficulty with an approaching storm like this is the unpredictability. You just don't know what the storm is going to do. Our philosophy for an approaching storm like this is we believe, for the benefit of the public and the customers, that it's best for us to try and sustain the electric system for as long as possible while still protecting our responders, not putting them out in danger. And in order to do that, one of our strategies, because we don't want the system to get unstable and collapse, we want to keep that system as stable as long as we can. Because we believe that in an approaching storm like this, it's important for people to have electricity. Electricity for their lighting, electricity for their communications, and electricity for all of the other facilities that they depend upon. So on an approaching storm like this, one of the strategies we do is we try to put online more generation than is normal. Because we anticipate when we start getting the fringe effects of the storm that we're going to have some of the generation go unstable. In this particular case, we did make contact with PGV and we asked them if they would stay on through the storm. That was planned and that was requested of them. We were told by them that they would reduce their output because of the approaching storm, and then we set up some of our other generators, brought them off from layout, put them online, and then we waited out the storm and went through the events. Now, this evening, I'm not prepared to go through the sequence of events that occurred that day. I invited Bob to come to my office and we can go over and I can show him more of the details. I'm not prepared today, primarily because our focus has been responding to the damage and restoring electricity to the customers that were out. Now we're in the phase of looking at, after action reports, areas of improvement, and looking at, the sequence of events that occurred that day. So, I mean, in a nutshell, basically, that's the reason why we asked PG&E to stay online, is to maintain the stability of the system and try to keep electric service going to as many of our customers as we can. Because we believe that it is critical for our customers to have that in a storm like this.
Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. Daryl, would you like to go next?
Good evening, and thank you as well for allowing us to be here. I'll just go through a quick chronology of how things played out that evening. So about 7:29, we received a call in the EOC. We were already in the midst of the initial impact of the storm, that there was a trip at the plant and that there was a release. At that point, the dispatch had informed us that the services were responding, hazmat, the Pahoa company, the normal response units were already en route. About 7:35 or so, I was able to make contact with the plant operations and confirm they had a abated release and that it was going through the emergency steam release facility. At that time, it wasn't known how long the release was going to last, and that was the trigger point for my putting out the radio message that went out shortly thereafter, advising the community that we had an uncontrolled release. And when I use the term uncontrolled, I'm basing it on the duration was not known as how long the release would go on for, not that it wasn't going through an abatement process. It was just unknown at that time how long the release was going to go for. And the instructions or the message contained information about sheltering in place, or if people were experiencing discomfort, that they could try to evacuate to the Pahoa Community Center, Pahoa High School, which we had opened up as a shelter in anticipation of the storm. It wasn't until about 9:15 or so that we received confirmation the plant had been shut down and shut in. There was no other release going, and we waited until they could do more perimeter checks and monitoring on the facility and in and out in the community using the portable units. As was already stated, they're perimeter monitors were offline with the blackout or with the power outage. And so at that point, once they had done significant amount of off-property readings with their portables, then a follow-up message was that there was no continued release and there was no other emissions in there, but that wasn't done till much later in the evening, I want to say closer to midnight, so almost 2 hours after the shut-in of the plant. And that's more or less a summary of how things played out in our office with civil defense.
Thank you, Darrell. John, would you speak from the Department of Health point of view?
Sure. The Department of Health has primarily our clean air branch is the primary branch of the Department of Health that's involved with PGV. But the HERE office was involved during the emergency response following the incident as well. So these bullets were put together. I've got copies to provide y'all, or at least some copies. I don't know if enough copies, but I'll just run through these. These are basically the information that the department had put together about the facts of the case and what's going on. So I think others have covered the time of the plant was stripped off, the estimated amounts of H2S emissions from both the ESRF, or the designed emergency release, as well as the unabated release. And the only other information that we had there was the plant manager, who was actually lived in Kapoho, I understand, and went to the plant to shelter away from the shore. They have sensitive meters there, and at the time of the mission, actually took some readings at the plant and then went down to Poiki, Leilani, and Lanipuna area and took readings, and those were reported as no higher than, I think the highest was 25 outside the plant parts per billion, and 34 or 35 in the building that he took with his handheld monitor at the time of the release. That would have been 8.
What are you talking about?
8 o'clock.
We're just individuals. We don't know what the frick you're talking about.
We gotta have a free flow of information here. We're not gonna get it if that kind of.
Whose information? I'm sorry.
Let me try to restate that then, I'm sorry.
Put it in layman's terms so that we can understand, because I can understand you, but some people don't understand, so you gotta put it in layman's terms.
Okay, so we said before that there are 4 monitors out there monitoring the H2S around the plant. 3 of them on PGV property and 1 of them in Leilani neighborhood. And all those monitors were down because the power was off. Excuse me? So those monitors were gone. There was no.
Solar batteries, nothing. You guys, Helco doesn't have any solar batteries going to test the emissions going off.
We're gonna.
Let's please let John finish. There'll be time for questions.
We're gonna do the question.
Purely insane the way that you're displaying this whole event.
You'll get your chance, please.
You're letting the demons rule. That's what you're doing, Tom.
That's not what
You're not giving the people a
That
chance
is not what he's doing.
I've asked 4 questions already, they have not been asked. They're not going to be asked again.
You get your chance.
Hold on for just a minute, please.
I have brain
Can you
damage.
please hold on for just a minute? If you have a question, write the question down and give it to me, and I will ask the question, because if we turn it into this kind of emotional meeting, and and then we're gonna do it, but we're not to the questions yet. We need to hear what they have to say, please. Listen, I've lived there since 1981. I've been exposed to hydrogen sulfide and knocked down more than anybody in this room. And we need to get this information if we're going to fix this problem. If we don't go through this process, we're not going to get anywhere, and it's going to continue. We're going to try and fix it. The idea.
Because everybody's being hypnotized right now.
I'm not being hypnotized. And anyway, I don't know what to tell you other than if you want to have a yelling match, we can get up. Listen, just a minute, please. If you want to have a yelling match, we can all get up and yell at each other, and we're not going to accomplish anything.
The purpose of the meeting, I'll say again, is to solve problems. To solve problems, we need to have information from both sides. There have been many things said here that I personally don't agree with and that I will challenge. I can assure you that that is going to occur. But we need to let them say what they think happened. And
in writing. I don't want what they say.
well, we have it on video. There are a lot of people here videoing, and we can get it on writing if we need to. So if we could turn down the temperature just a couple of degrees, and I would appreciate it, so we can go ahead and listen to the rest of the participants.
This information I'm going through is in writing, and it's being passed out now. I don't know if there's enough copies for everybody. And again, these were just facts that were put together by the Department of Health of what information it had as of this meeting about the event and about any monitoring data that they knew about the event. That's what it is. And the point I was taking, that the monitors were down, and they were returned to service not until August 14th, so they were down approximately a week. And during that time, we just have readings with handheld monitors that are reading the H2S level, okay? And there's a small set of data that the plant manager took at the time of the innovated release at the plant and on the roads outside, and that's, to my knowledge, some of the few H2S monitoring data we have, and that information is in the sheet there. And we can ask questions about that data later. As I said, the monitors, the 4 monitors went back up on August 14th. During that time, the plant was going through a scheduled maintenance, so they were bringing the plant back up for a week during that time after the storm. And there were additional clean air branch and HERE office staff brought over during that time to monitor, to respond to any complaint that came into the Department of Health. And that's what happened. They're repeatedly monitored around the plant. The clean air branch has 10 stations sectioned around the plant, between the plant and the neighborhoods there, where they do routine monitoring with equipment that's sensitive to take H2S readings to determine what levels are. They also responded to complaints and would go out to people's house if they requested and monitor the H2S levels. And those occurred during that week afterward when the plant was being brought up and the maintenance was going on. And those occurred August 13, 14, 18, 21, 22, 25. That's in the information where this monitoring by the Clean Air Branch occurred at the facility. They also do inspections of PGV as part of their work, and the plant was inspected back in May, July, and August during this time period. As I said, when complaints came into the Department of Health, they would respond to those complaints, call them up, try to talk to them, offer to go out with the monitors and measure H2S levels at various homes. They interviewed some residents themselves, and we were gathering the information like Tom was of who called in, where they lived, and where those complaints were, what the complaints symptoms were as well, and we are interested in that data. They're in discussions with the Environmental Protection Agency, the Poison Control Center, the attending physicians, the people that went to the doctor, as well as County Civil Defense. And since the DOH air quality monitor, the fixed station in Leilani has gone up, the levels have all been very low of H2S on the order of 0 to 1 parts per billion on the 1 hour average, which is what they measure. And the plant has a permit that they have to meet 25 parts per billion, be below 25 parts per billion H2S for a 1 hour average. So that's the permit level they have to meet at all times. And as I said, since the plant was coming up after the event out, as far as we know, those measures have been below that level. During the incident, all the monitors are down, so we don't have that information. That's why your reports are important during that.
What about moving the monitors to a different area? They're all located on hills.
Why doesn't everybody have one?
Just a.
Let's wait, please write these questions.
Those are good
down.
follow-up questions, but, and I can take those down or try to address them. Finally, just to get through these bullets, I wanted to mention that, again, since the air monitors are brought up, the H2S levels have been low. All the monitoring around the plant during the time period since the incident, since everything was closed in and the plant brought up, have been low. And the on-site inspections by the Clean Air Branch of the PG facility itself have indicated normal operating conditions since that time. And as far as we know, they're meeting that 25 part per billion standard since the time of that uncontrolled release. So again, this is all in writing, so you can share that.
Can I have a copy?
Yeah, it's been passed around, I think.
Still waiting for my list?
Print some more, we'll pass them around.
I guess they're printing some more, we'll get some more copies around. We now get to the question part. I would like, before we start asking questions from the audience, I'd like to ask Mike a question. When was the highest pressure in the plant? When was it achieved? In other words, you know, if there was a pressure peak that caused the relief valves to lift, was there a second pressure relief valve after the relief valves closed?
Let me just kind of encompass everything. The emergency steam release facility is designed to open at 250 psig. The pressure relief valve that lifted unabated is designed to open at 335 psig. From our indications, the highest recorded pressures we recorded was 320 psig. And to answer your question, yes, that one pressure relief valve did open, and then there was another one that momentarily opened.
But it would seem like to me, the nature of the question is, did the pressure relief valve lift on the initial pressure surge, or did it lift, as some reports have said, after the emergency steam relief valve shut?
From our experience, the emergency steam release facility activated first, and then shortly thereafter, the pressure relief valve activated.
So the pressure relief valves relieved for about an hour and some minutes.
Hour and 45 minutes, but it started after the emergency steam release because the steam release was activated and then the audible sound came on after that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So make sure you get your questions up here and I'll ask them. I want to follow up with Mike on that. Mike, how long, if the emergency steam release system, you had trouble getting it activated, how long did it take? And while that was happening, what happens to all the pressure in the plant? You know, I understand you didn't have power, and so you had trouble activating the emergency steam release. So just from a layman's, because I'm not an engineer like Tom, but I'm just imagining that you have a huge pressure surge, the release isn't working, and you blew the valve.
Okay, so the emergency steam release facility performed exactly like it was designed to do, and it opened up at the pressure set points. The PRV, or the unabated relief valve, opened because we estimate that we experience what's referred to as hammering, where there's some slug flow. Because, you know, I said the highest reading we recorded was 320 psig. but those relief valves are designed to open at 335.
So how long did it take to get the actual ERS working?
The ESRF working is pretty instantaneous, but if you're referring to actually like closing it in.
I just was wondering, so without power it automatically, but were you abating, that kind of thing? Because I thought you guys had some trouble there, and if I'm mistaken, I'd like you to correct that.
Okay, let me clarify on the power issue. We have an emergency generator that is designed to provide enough power for a safe shutdown. We have like a 1 megawatt generator, diesel generator, yes. And that generator kicked in. Now, the power we did not have, which we are normally accustomed to, is Helco. And a Helco power will power up all the non-emergency required equipment. That was the difference.
I've got a bunch of more questions, but I'm going to go through some of the community questions here first, okay? This question is from John, why was there no backup power system at the plant for at least a test on the emission intensity on the 7th and 8th? And actually that question I think might go to the Department of Health. You have an air permit for the power plant, and why aren't the air sampling stations required to have backup power under the air permit from the Department of Health?
You're asking about backup generators for the fixed monitoring station, right?
I'm talking about the 3 PGV fixed stations and the 1 DOH, and their sampling stations is what they are. So this is not a new problem. After the blowout, there was an investigation that was done by Goddard, and her recommendations in that. And one of the recommendations in there, I believe, was that we had to have backup power on the monitoring systems. That was in 1993. And we still don't have, now we found out, backup power. And so the question is, why is that required under the air permit? And if not, why not?
Just as a matter of course, the 1996 inspection by the EPA, which was released in 2000, said that there should be backup power as well. Also the Geothermal Public Health Working Group final report recommended that there be backup power. So I know of at least 3 instances in the past, going back to 1990, that it has been recommended that there be backup power to the sampling stations.
All right, so as I was introduced, I'm not with the Clean Air branch, but I can, so I'm assuming what Tom says is true. There were recommendations in the past about these backup generators. All I can tell you is that they weren't there. I know that the Clean Air branch is talking about addressing that now, both for the Department of Health station over here as well, and talking to PGV about doing that. So that is a significant issue, I think, and I know that they're talking about it and seeing it, but since I don't work in that branch, I can't tell you the history of why that decision wasn't made earlier.
Thank you. So what we're going to do in a case like this, when the question can't be answered, is Suzanne Wakeland is going to write the question down, and we're going to send it to the Department of Health and ask for an answer in writing. This question is, why didn't PGV shut down prior to the arrival of the storm? I think that question was answered already.
I think you need to step away from the camera.
Well, I can't stand in front of the camera. Why was PGV operating during a hurricane that was sure to impact electrical lines and necessitate venting? I think they gave that explanation, their explanation of that.
Bob, could I ask the question in another sense? After reviewing the fact that on the March 13th, 2013 incident, we had clear indication that we were going to release hydrogen sulfide to the community. We also had knowledge that during a storm it was highly probable that there wouldn't be any way to get in and out of the plant during the emergency. In retrospect, do you think that emergency procedures need to be reviewed so that in future situations like this, the plant would be shut down? And I ask that to all 4 people.
I'll go first on that one. Again, I'm going to reiterate that when we have an approaching storm like that, we believe that keeping the lights on for our customers and the public is crucial as part of their preparation. In this particular case, we did ask Puna Geothermal Ventures to stay online, as we did with all of our large generators, even our own. Having that increases the likelihood of the entire system staying stable and online, and we believe that's essential for public benefit. Are we going to go back and look at procedures? Yes, we are. As I said earlier, we haven't gone into that phase of looking at this event, but we will. We're sitting here with after-the-fact information. The unpredictability of storms, you don't know. You don't know if this storm would have veered north and avoided. Let's listen. Okay, I'm done.
See, now, I really would like to know what he has to say, and if he can't talk, then he's going to probably leave, and then we're not going to get that information. You can be as mad as you want, but Puna Pono Alliance needs this information. So please, can we please just hear what they have to say? Thank you. So this question here.
I would like to ask Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If he thinks PGB emergency procedures need to be reviewed so that when there's a likely loss of transmission, they operate at lower power or at no power.
Okay.
Excuse me, can I just interject for 1 second? There's all these written questions in the community. You 2 gentlemen have regular contact. So if you would let some of our questions be asked in a more rapid process, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I accept your criticism. I'll stop.
Thank you.
Okay. The question was, please repeat that.
I just wondered if you thought your emergency procedures need to be reviewed as to whether you should operate when there's a almost probable loss of transmission lines.
Okay, got it. So,
We knew that. With all that, you knew that.
Just be quiet.
Wait. I don't think waste my time. Michael, you and I go way back. All of you guys can come way out, but you know what?
You're out of order.
I'm not saying that. You guys knew.
Hey, Sim, let me please.
I just saying.
I know, but you know me. You think I'm a sellout? You think I'm hypnotized?
I'm not here for the public or whatever. I'm here for my grandma. And you know what? If you guys are going to listen, I'll tell you a show. It should come to stay. Got that, Mike?
I agree.
You and me, family, you know? You went way back. I'm your nemesis, always will be. You know? Here's 2 questions. 1 and 2. You talk to Israel.
Okay, so the next.
Talk to Hannah birthday. Okay? I'm done with that.
The next question is, I'm going to rephrase, I'm going to read the question and I'm going to rephrase it. It says, why does Helco and PGV think it's okay to endanger the residents of Puna, especially when they're already at risk from the natural disaster? And I think I'd like to rephrase that to say, that ERS is designed to protect the plant, but isn't that at the expense of the community?
Yes.
okay, Bob, the ESRF, Emergency Steam Release Facility, is designed to protect the plant first and foremost. But ultimately, because of the Department of Health requirements to mitigate the emission levels, we are required to chemically treat it with the sodium hydroxide and water. Now, it is understood that on occasion, hopefully not too often, the ESRF will be required to be activated. But in the event it is required to be activated, such as this storm situation, then by DOH requirements, we have to scrub the H2S out, at least 95% of it.
Okay, I just want to,
I can add to that. So the 25 part per million 1 hour H2S 1 hour exposure limit set by the Clean Air Branch permit applies to upset conditions as well. So that's why the emergency systems need to be designed to do that. And that's the ambient air level designed to protect the community. So they need to design to that. And the department is still investigating this incident, looking at possible violations and enforcement actions as a result of that. Those decisions haven't been made yet, but they're still investigating.
thank you. Okay, so I'll make the next question to you. You had Cliff out there with the portable monitor, and he's reporting the highest reading at 25 parts per billion. You are aware that on March 13th of last year, the highest reading that PGV or the handheld monitors reported was 28 parts per billion, while Hazmat had a reading of 3 parts per million, or 3,000 parts per billion. So I just, do you understand that hot steam and gases go up and over that fence and over those monitors and then come down into the community? And that if you have a 3,000 ppb in the community, and you're telling us, the Department of Health is telling us that it's not a violation of a 25 part per billion hourly average, that's not very comforting. And can you address that at all?
Well, I understand that you're writing this, what questions you have down to provide the agency, so I can look into that. I wasn't involved in that incident you say. I don't know the numbers, and I'm not about to make a decision on something I don't know the facts about.
That's fine.
I can tell you that if they have a permitted level and they exceed that, they should be held to that. That's what those enforcement levels are for.
But you didn't have any monitoring data, so how do you know? Okay, so I won't put you on the spot.
The power was out, we don't know.
I understand that. Okay, so I guess then I'll ask another question. Then, why, if you didn't know, did Department of Health go into the press and publicly say that there were no impacts in the community? I want to get a real answer to the question. Thank you.
Again, perhaps since you're sending these in, I can get you a more thorough answer, but the only, and you know, I'm working on lots of issues, but the only, Tom made reference to a news article he heard about the deputy director saying something about no health effects shortly after. As far, the only one I heard about the deputy director on the news saying something, he was responding to a group of 10 or 12 people that had gone to the emergency response or hospital, and they contacted the physicians of those and asked them, you know, were there documented health effects from those checkups? And as I understand, he was speaking to that issue. So they got the reports back from the physicians, and the physicians.
Okay, so on that.
That was my understanding.
Okay, well, I read the article, and anyway. So on that, is Sophia here? Sophia, what did the Department of Health doctor tell you at the emergency room after?
Stand up, please. Well, a group of us went to the emergency room for some tests, which we have not received the results of. Oh, thank you.
gotta turn it on.
There were about 6 or 7 of us.
And, ooh, okay. This was six or 7 days following the 7th, the 12th. We went in for blood draws, and they gave us cups to go home and pee in the morning to drop off at clinical labs. And the doctor, Dr. Fitzgerald, went and spoke to, I think, the CDC, and came back and gave us a little chat as we left, and she said, well, it's pretty much like a very foggy day up at the volcano. That's exactly what she said. And I said, yeah, but that's sulfur dioxide, and this is hydrogen sulfide. They're two totally different gases. And she said, it's pretty close. So.
That was, I just wanted you to be aware of that because I don't think that's proper. Okay, so the next question is for PGV. How deep is the reinjection well of the geothermal toxic fluids? What determined the depth? Was there an environmental impact study done on this process?
Okay, just to be clear, what is the depth of the geothermal injection wells? Was there any studies to...
Who's the chemist?
What determined the depth, and was there an environmental impact study done in this process?
So...
Sir, I know all the information, girlfriend. You don't know nothing. You like talk. I got stuff I need to answer. My man got fired by the phone, right, Mike? The ex. Up force. They take all the data. Are they chemists? Certified chemists? Did they have the training? Are those up force that he trained? Are they chemists? Is the Department of Health? Is it the geologist or is it these chemists? Because all that stuff that you didn't want to give me, which is the MSDS list, when it hits flame, it does an emission of gases. Highly effective on human anatomy. I'm a Lafa'au. Know me Lafa'au. Okay? I treat the people. They come to me, especially the family, right? Okay? They're feeling the ailments. You can breathe, they throw up, all of this dizziness, you know, a lot of violence, because men cannot handle the heavy metals in it, the intake. You absorb it through your virgin skin. And that's why I want to know why the Department of Health never shut them down. You gave them the permit.
Good point.
You guys knew Israel was coming, and you guys, what? The money more important. The people are expendable, the general said.
Okay, Sim, thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you. The next question is, how close does the lava have to flow towards PGV before they remove the isopentane from the site? Is there sufficient storage capacity off-site to house all of the 60,000 gallons of the material? And I want to remind, I think your math was a little off the other night. Okay.
Thank you. And actually, Bob, one of the University, Hawaii Community College professors on math actually corrected me that night. At the volcano, at the meeting where Chief Oliveira and Dr. Jim was given an update, I stated that for the 60,000 gallons of pentane, we needed 120 containers. I was wrong. All we need is 12 containers, and I was referring to the containers that we normally transport them in from the mainland. After discussing that, though, we did some further assessment of that, and we actually have enough storage vessels and containers on location that we're looking at being able to transfer the pentane and getting it out of the path of any lava that might be coming our direction. We can move it to higher ground, or we can move it into Hilo or Kea'au or some industrial, some safer place. And again, this is also a contingency plan that we're working closely with Civil Defense, because Civil Defense has offered to assist if we needed additional containers.
So how close does the lava have to be?
You know, if the lava is going to head to PGV, it probably needs to cross Leilani or Nanavale. So Hopefully,
When are you going to react? Like when the lava hits?
we're going to use the expertise of Professor Kawaikawa and Civil Defense, but we may take proactive approaches and even doing some evacuations prior to what Civil Defense or the USGS HBO folks tell us to do.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so this question is for Helco. Why didn't you have your crews clear the power lines from the albizia trees prior to the hurricane? Like just in general, I think the question is why are we letting albizia trees grow over the power lines?
With respect to vegetation management, we have done extensive line clearing adjacent to our power lines. But as you know, these albizia trees grow much taller than we actually have the land rights to go in. And albizias is something that we all have to follow up on. That's one of the things that we have to follow up on this storm. And it's not a situation that the electric utility alone can resolve. This is something for all of us to address.
Thank you, Jay. This one is for Daryl. Did you have any contact with PGV as part of your civil defense preparations prior to the hurricane? Do you have the authority to close the plant prior to such a storm? If not, who does?
Yes, we did have contact with PGV. They participate in our weather briefs. We have what they call a 140 brief well in advance of the impact of the storm, at least 5 days out. So they're one of the stakeholders that participates in that brief along with the other agencies. As well as on the Wednesday prior, we did discuss the current status of the storm and its approach. As far as the authority, no, I don't have the authority to close the plant.
Who does?
And
do you know?
No, I'm sorry. I mean, at this point,
we'll put that question in writing. Okay, we'll put that question in writing. Thank you. Okay, here's one for the Department of Health. Where are the sampler source emissions and meteorological data from the PGV monitoring system? Please do not refer us to your website. It is not functional. Can you provide the data on a CD? And I want to elaborate. The DOH website has never been functional, and this is for over 20 years. I have tried over the years many times to look at that site to get historical data, and it's never worked. And we've been promised and promised and promised that that site would be worked. Could you please do something about it?
I work for the HERE office and our website works. I'll take that back to Clean Air Branch that has that data. That's a very reasonable request. Maybe they can send someone out and work with you if you need more training on the website or get it fixed if it's broken. It makes sense. It needs to be there.
Some of the people that haven't been able to access data are PhDs.
So it sounds like a problem.
I think it's the website.
I'll take that back. I'll take that back.
Thank you. So I think what this is asking is PGV has their own internal monitors. Is there data from the internal monitors at PGV, and can we have access to it?
So the internal monitors are primarily the handheld ones that we go around with. And I believe we reported those data points to the Department of Health in lieu of not having the fixed stations in operation.
Don't you have a series of 30 or some odd little fixed monitors, things like that?
We do, and those currently do not record data.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
Let me elaborate, Bob. Those 30 fixed detectors is not required at all for PGV. It is voluntary.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. That's really not helpful. That's really not helpful. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. I understand. Okay, what does isopentane smell like? Do you know, anybody know?
At the next meeting, I could bring some. But let me say something. Part of the contingency plan, it smells similar to gasoline. I mean, it's a carbon-based derivative of the refining process. It's a carbon C5. Butane, propane, pentane, they're all related. And just to add, as far as our contingency about removing pentane if the lava comes, if people were in need of fuel for their vehicles, pentane could be used for that.
Okay, so the next questions are for to Mike and Jay. How will PGV and HELCO work together to prevent a recurrence of this situation? What is the plan, guys? What's the plan, guys?
Well, first and foremost, let me re-emphasize that our plant responded exactly as it's designed to do in loss of the transmission lines. But going forward, yes, we work with HELCO on a continuous basis to improve, ultimately, reliability of our plant and getting energy to the customers.
Excuse me, I just have to, I'm going to promise that I won't interrupt, but this one I have to say. The emergency steam relief facility worked as designed. The pressure relief valve may have worked as designed, but it shouldn't have lifted with the accident that occurred.
Thank you. All right.
I agree.
Thank you. Information.
Well, as I said earlier, we're going to go through and look through the sequence of events. We already started discussions with PGV on, possible future improvements.
Thank you. I apologize if some of the questions are repetitive. I'm just trying to ask them all. All right, so this one's for HELCO. What was the process by which HELCO decided to keep PGV running despite prior knowledge that the storm was coming? Downward trees would force the plant shut down. I think that's been answered. Thank you. DOH, how can you justify saying that there was no impact from H2S? The community were there. There was no data available except one handheld detector reading at the PGV perimeter. I think, did you guys jump the gun and saying that there people were out of line and complaining?
Obviously, I can't speak for the deputy director who you're addressing here, but all I can say is I imagine, knowing the deputy director, I imagine he was making statements on the best information he had at the time. We're continuing to gather data, and we'll evaluate that. And I think ultimately, take your questions, answer them to the best of our ability, and get you answers, get you questions, and try to be forthright and.
Will you revise your statement? New news story that you guys made a mistake. Will you revise that?
The people that are evaluating data as we get it, if that leads to a different conclusion, wouldn't that make sense?
I would like to rephrase.
For me it does.
I'd like to rephrase that. I would like to rephrase the question. Would you please not jump to conclusions and issue public statements like that in the future without having the knowledge? Because that has been the history of the Department of Health since 1981. That anytime there's a release, automatically there's a news story from Department of Health that says there's no health problems. Can you please not do that in the future until you have looked at the data, please?
Do your job.
Okay, this one's for Mike. Mike, besides pentane, what other chemicals are stored at PGV and in what quantities? I know you got caustic soda, and I don't know what else you might have over there.
Pentaene is probably the largest in quantity, 60,000 gallons. We have diesel fuel, probably a couple thousand gallons for the diesel generator and fire pump vehicles. We have unleaded fuel, maybe 100 gallons, 1,000 gallons, excuse me. And then we have some water treatment chemicals. It's probably not more than a combined total of maybe 1,000, couple thousand gallons total. We do have some sulfuric acid. The most I can see us having is maybe 3,000-4,000 gallons.
How much caustic soda do you got?
Excuse me, caustic soda, we have 2 storage tanks that are 12,000 gallons capacity each, so it's 24,000. By the air permit, we're required to have at least 3 days worth of ESRF activation.
Are most of those chemicals you just said, are they in above ground storage tanks?
They're all above storage, yeah, they're all in above ground storage tanks and have concrete berms to capture if there's any spill. Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. Here's another one for you. If it's a slow moving lava flow, what's the emergency plan as opposed to a fast moving lava flow?
That's a good question. I guess if it's a slow moving lava flow, then our response will be slow. I don't know. It's just a tricky question. We will listen to Civil Defense, Chief Oliveira. We'll listen to the input from Dr. Jim Kawahikawa.
Okay, here's another one for you. Sorry, Mike. Is there any other geothermal in the world that's in a residential, agriculture, and lava zone 1 area? Do you truly believe that this is safe?
First off and foremost, I truly believe PGB is safe, can be operated safely, and PGB is a good corporate citizen. There are other places in the world, this is my opinion, please, okay? Thank you. There are other places where there's geothermal power plants in Lava Zone 1 and volcanic activity in the Philippines. There's numerous plants in Indonesia, in Iceland, in Africa. It's worldwide. We're just fortunate to have one here on Hawaii Island.
But in neighborhoods? In neighborhoods?
In neighborhoods.
And we've only got about 5 more minutes. I've got about 100 questions here, so I wish I could answer them all. But if you get them written down, I will try and get answers for you, especially if you put your names on there. I've still got a few. What do you got, Brad?
I would just like to ask a couple of my own questions. This has turned into the Bob and Peter show, but I've heard stuff said here after I submitted my questions. I'll be civil, I'll be quick, but I would like to address each one of these gentlemen. I didn't come here to sit an hour to not be able to say anything. You're editing, you're choosing which ones you say. I'm part of the public. It's not just about you. It's not just about you. It's not just about him.
I understand that. Well, where's your meeting? I mean,
I wrote down my questions.
I understand that. You know what it took to put this together? I mean, do you really understand that I don't get paid? That Tom doesn't get paid? Do you understand that?
Questions that are
Gentlemen, you have
redundant.
5 minutes. I have questions to answer. Thank you.
He's taking him off the top. I wish he was screening.
I'd like to
because he keeps
address that.
repeating.
We were one of the first to put it.
It might be on the
hand it to
Yeah,
him
I
before
was up
everyone
there on
else.
top.
So we're not even going to order.
You ask your own
I'm
questions.
trying as best I can. You know what? I'm gonna just close the meeting, I guess.
How many people have questions they would like to ask? John, if you come back for a second. If we pass the mics around and give everybody an opportunity to ask, could we be sure that we're asking questions and not making statements?
And limit the time for 3 minutes per talker.
Something, yeah.
About 30 seconds. About 30 seconds.
Who's first?
I submitted a question right off the bat initially.
I know that there's experts and people that will sort this out in a very good way. My question is just very basic. Some basic things that we didn't have. NORAD did not work. We were prepared. We prepared well in advance, and NORAD didn't work for us. So this is for civil defense. We're new to this area from California, And so we got hit, we moved here, we got hit by the hurricane, and we got hit by, but we're used to earthquakes. NORAD didn't work. What can we expect next time as far as that being up and running? What's NORAD? What's NORAD?
What do you mean?
Well, you can explain that better than I can.
Well, I'm not sure I can because I'm not sure what you're referring to as NORAD.
The national NOAA. The emergency response that goes out. NOAA. I can't say what the acronym. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
It didn't work. It went out.
The emergency alert system that does
Yes.
that is activated by the National Weather Service.
Yes, it didn't work that night. We had separate power, and we couldn't get any transmissions, so we had to use Facebook to get that get the thing that you the uncontrolled release to leave to evacuate, which
Correct.
we couldn't. We were blocked by trees. Okay.
And one of the things we're trying to do is identify every possible means of communication and tools we could use to keep the community informed. So as you point out, the emergency alert system is one tool. We use the local radio stations as another tool. We have the mass notification system, which sends out the text and the email, which is another tool. Unfortunately, when you're using or you lose power, many of these tools won't work. So the only other option would have, and we're working in that direction for specifically the Leilani community, is to have a separate siren system that can be activated. And that will have its limitations as well. But also door to door. And unfortunately, again, when we're talking about a weather event, so that may be limited too. So part of it is working with you, the community. I've had conversations with both Tom and Bob about how can we increase or improve like a phone tree down to that level. So it's every single tool we can find, we're gonna activate and use. So there's some flow of information coming out to you.
Okay, we're gonna organize the question now. We're gonna take one from that side. Tom's gonna do it. You line up on that side, and we're gonna switch to this side. So I'll take the next question from this side.
Aloha. I have been in my land since before geothermal. The corridor is behind my land, so we have, in many ways, a long-term relationship. I'm photovoltaic. I don't use telco power. I think that sometimes we have to be community-based. We have to be community-based. One of the agreements is through the EIS is that you will always give me notification about releases. I do not receive those notifications, and certainly in an emergency, I need to be notified that you're going to release. I'm also not included, even though I am within 1 mile. You always do the other side, you don't do the full circle. So, my question is, how come no notifications of the release beforehand? You had time, Civil Defense has a whole system. You did not give us notification that you were going to release something, and it's always a risk that it can be harmful because of valves sticking. There's history. Why didn't you notify?
Good question.
It's a violation of the permit.
Yeah, I think Mike too.
Okay. The permit does not require us to notify the public directly. The permit requires us to notify Civil Defense, and that is exactly what we did. If you would like to be notified, you can give me your contact information. You may not be notified immediately like Civil Defense would be, but we would ultimately be willing to notify community residents that are interested.
Okay, we're going to that question. Come on, you want to stand right here? You have a chat. To you, Tom.
Related to that right there, this is from the planning department right here. Here's the permit. It says right here, you shall notify each resident household within the radius within 24 hours it wants. So you did not do that. So you're in violation of the permit. Every time that there's a release, planned release, whatever release, we're supposed to be notified. It doesn't say anything about the county notifying us. This is your responsibility. I've talked to the planning and asked them. It's your responsibility.
Thanks, Tom.
My question, though, if I may. My question is, well, I'd like to extend a hand of hopefully friendship. If you could come around and be a hero for your company, for your shareholders, for this community, put up all the stations that we're asking. Put them at every house within 1 mile. Give the residents in 1 mile of a room where we can go and be safe once we hear that siren. Put 2 sirens up, one for the any release, a second one for dangerous amount of release, so that we know that we need to start getting moving or get out of the area, get into the safe room. You could be a hero. That's a good idea. Okay? Given that, I mean, if something's not done, the stockholders are going to find out, and it's going to come down on you.
What's your question?
My question is, I guess that is my question.
Thanks, Mike.
Please do it.
Wait, we have a question over here.
Hey, you guys, I really appreciate you guys coming up here. It takes a lot of guts to sit on that table because we're not your friends on some level. Everybody is complacent about this emergency release into the atmosphere. Mike, I brought this up to you at other meeting. That it's acceptable. It's acceptable that if things go bad for PGV and or Helco, to release this hydrogen sulfide into the neighborhood. And my question, and this is more of an engineering question, is why, okay, I understand, and Mike, if I remember earlier, one of those relief valves, but I haven't heard this tonight, opened but didn't reseat. Is that correct? So that it opened and it didn't close the way it was designed to. I believe that was in one of the other meetings. I just want to set that for the record. But why, okay, so you've got this plumbing system, this very dynamic system with high pressure system, and I've got a relief valve. We all understand house plumbing. You have a hot water relief valve. Well, why isn't that encased? That in case it does blow, again, everybody's complacent that it's okay to release this into the community. Why isn't that encased and designed to be re-injected back into your re-injection wells? And if it means that you got to condense it, to put it back from steam to fluid, whatever, that's an engineering issue. And then this is a mute meeting. We wouldn't even be having this discussion. If it goes bad for you guys, you blow the valves, and now it's injected back into your re-injection wells. To me, it's just simple. You can't gas the community.
So, Mike, the main question was, can you encase it? Can you liquefy it and send it back down into the re-injection well instead of releasing it into the atmosphere? Which seems like a good engineering thing to me.
It's a good question. We definitely did look at that, and the results after many discussions and assessments was that we did not deem that it would be a requirement to connect it directly to re-injection.
So that is a requirement based on your permits, but not in respect to your neighbors, man. I want to have you guys over for beer and poo-poos. You know what I mean? Let's start it. Don't gas your neighbors, man.
I'd be happy to come over for beer and poo-poo.
On your side.
John Bryant.
Thank you. I want to start by apologizing to Bob and to everyone else here. I lost my cool for a moment. I do have very civil questions and comments for each of you. Starting with Mike and the representative from Helco. As I understand it, there was a meeting prior to the hurricane/tropical storm, and a decision was made. And if I read between the lines, it sounds to me as if Helco dictated that you would stay up running. Now you can tell me if that's wrong, but based on the 2013 incident where the transmission lines were cut, and you say you have this mechanism at your plant, And if I'm mistaken, you can tell me, but it seems like it's designed to protect the plant, so the stuff doesn't blow up. You've got too much pressure built up, and you got to let that steam out. Now, the last time the president of Helco was here, and he seemed to indicate that in the future, they would notify you prior to cutting the emission line. But in the event of a hurricane, it just seems prudent and practical. And you had to weigh the residents who live close to that power plant. And I'm starting to wonder what a life is worth. I have 2 young daughters, and we live in the shadow of that plant. And I can't place a price on their lives. But you guys had to understand that when that steam is kicked out, and part of it was abated and part of it was unabated, right? So no caustic soda was injected and hydrogen sulfide was coming out at levels that none of us know for sure. And when you go with a handheld monitor, you can walk 50 yards this way, 50 yards that way, and get completely different readings, especially in blustery winds. You know, and it's so many parts per million that it's lethal. The only things that I can think of that are that lethal are cyanide, which, by the way, the same treatment that they'll give you at the hospital if you've been exposed to a lot is the same treatment for cyanide poisoning. But that you made the decision to subject us to that danger when you could have powered down for a few hours as that storm was coming through, in my mind, is unconscionable. Our lives aren't worth that much. I mean, if we were back in the 40s and there was a bombing raid coming toward the coast, wouldn't you have people turn out their lights until it was over? I mean, come on. We all got a taste here in Puna of what it's like to go without electricity. Electricity is a luxury, but you can survive without it for a short window of time. And I want our lives to be more valuable than everyone having full electricity all over the entire island. Now, I'm glad that the Department of Health is here in person and listening and watching, because there's been a history where we wondered where you were. And for the Deputy Director to make that kind of statement prior to his investigators having done their field research, what are they supposed to think? Once he's deemed it safe, is his underling supposed to come back with data to the contrary? That'd be ruining your career if you did that. So what are the field investigators supposed to come back with? And Mr. Oliveira, I spoke with you after the 2013 incident, and I've been saying the same thing for a long time. But the investment of those handheld monitors, those electronic canaries, and I've looked at the prices, it's between $200, the highest being around $310. The high-end model will record the history and the peak readings. Now, as a business entity, and by the way, I want to say for a second, that plant is not...
would you please summarize? Because we have a lot of questions, okay? Just summarize.
Okay. The summary is that those small instruments not only would give you the ability to collect data afterwards, but for us as the people in the danger zone or the hot zone, the only way for us to get a timely warning of when to leave would be one of those canaries. Because there's not time for the civil defense to be notified by PGV. And that's what you were relying upon that night, because everybody else's monitors were down. But if the sampling in that hot zone or the 1 mile radius had those, you not only have after the fact data, but you get a dispersal pattern, and you get a more definitive picture. I want to survive this. I want to be able to get my girls out. And it's not just hurricanes, but there's earthquakes and a host of other things. And I want everyone to step up and do the right thing. Those monies that have been set aside in the funds, the royalties, are for mitigation, yet not one penny's been spent on mitigation. We bought some nice luxuries for Puna, but it's time to use it for something that will save lives. And I want our lives to be more important than anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, and we're back to this side. Quick question, let's limit your questions so everybody has a chance, okay?
Mike and Jay, tell me, if another country was to come and do to us what you guys did to us, do you think that the United States would put up with it? they would call this situation an act of terror, I think, and we could be in a war against another country. Isn't that the case?
No.
I think that was a rhetorical question. Tom, back to your side.
Yes, I'm within about a mile of that plant. I was wondering about two things. Ever since that night, the noise level has really risen on that plant. I mean, I couldn't hear, it was just really light before, but now it blasts through there. And so I know the noise level is really went up, and I want to know what was that about. And also you mentioned none of your employees had any side effects. By any chance, did any of your employees have an oxygen or mask? We didn't.
Hey, let me address the noise question. The plant was started back up on August 19th, and we are not at full capacity, but the noises you're hearing today is essentially just the normal equipment that's operating. Your second question, none of our employees were wearing personal protective equipment such as breathing apparatus or gas masks, none.
Thank you. Back to our side. This gentleman has a question.
Given that the recent events have shown that you can have a storm condition that both has a unabated, uncontrolled toxic release, plus trees down over the road and other things that totally prevent evacuation, given that as the situation, then the only effective remedy that I can think of is either to have gas masks or oxygen or both for every resident that's within the range of your gases. So therefore, I am asking, when do you intend to deliver gas masks to all the residents so that we can be safe?
Thank you. Good question. Who do you want to answer? Who's anyone?
Say one more thing. I was just wondering why the Department of Health has sent somebody other than from the Clean Air Branch, because several questions you've denied answering because you're the relevant authority. So the question is, should DOH send a relevant authority that can actually answer the questions?
We got one here too, Steve.
All I can say.
Over to your side. Go ahead, answer the question.
In answer to that question, there's one person in Hilo, and I imagine he couldn't make it tonight, so I volunteered to come out so I could hear things, write things down, get questions back to them. I talked to the manager in Honolulu. I was over there doing some work. Got this information that I brought to you from the Clean Air Branch manager, and I just volunteered because he couldn't come out. I don't know exactly why he couldn't.
Well, you're very brave, but if you're smart, you wouldn't come back uninformed. Okay. Back to your side.
My question is to John, the Health Department. Is it on?
Hello.
It was a serious question. I wanted answers.
About the gas masks.
Yes.
Anybody want to volunteer?
Frankly, I don't know how to answer that question yet. Hopefully, as a result of all your input, these questions that are going to come to the different agencies, the evaluation that's still ongoing about the incident and those effects will cause all these agencies to look at, well, you know, what's the effective mitigation or remedy for another situation just like this? What can we learn from this? And if respirators are part of that picture, I think that should be considered. I don't know if that's the best answer or not. I can't tell you that without looking into
couldn't get in, the people couldn't get out, you're stuck. So now what?
I understand the situation is
We're
stuck.
going back to the same situation today.
But there have been other situations or other suggestions that would have addressed it, like shutting down the plant is one that came up earlier. So there could be a number of ways to addressing that is all I'm saying, and hopefully all those things will be looked at and we'll learn from this mistake.
Thank you for
coming.
coming.
Back to you, Tom. Your question.
We have a question over here.
Yeah, John, I got to ask you a question in regards to the ER room experience, the follow-up. Because like when Sophia was talking about what happened when we went to the ER room, there were 7 of us that went from here to the ER room to have blood work and other tests taken. The doctor that night did come in and say there was nothing different than what was released as a foggy day on the volcano, which was a strange response. But also what happened was we were asked to provide urine testing the next morning at the lab. My wife and I and daughter went, because there were 7 of us in the household, we all had symptoms of various sorts, and we were just curious what happened. So we went to the lab in Pahoa, gave our urine samples, and they were supposed to be sent to a special lab in Oregon that a doctor recommended because it had the monitoring facility to analyze those particular chemicals. We waited several days. We waited a week, waited 10 days. My wife called the Bay Clinic. They said they had no idea what we were talking about. And also they told us that that particular lab didn't exist. And we talked to Sophia and the doctor that told us that's the lab that certainly does exist. They have 7 branches. So somehow our urine tests were lost in space somewhere and no explanation was given. So I don't know if there's a better system of testing people that do have a complaint to find out the legitimacy of the complaint or not. And maybe the ER room could have its own way of sending these results to a specific lab that could test for that, so it's not psychosomatic, and we could show that some documentation that we did have puffy eyes, respiratory problems, lethargy. I sort of passed out for 12 hours right when I was excited. These things happen, but it'd be good to see them documented from a lab, not lost and telling us that the lab doesn't exist and our urine was all lost. So.
Well, that's very unfortunate. Your labs were lost, and that's not good, not right. But I think you made a good suggestion on, if we get complaints in the future, what is the best recommendations that we have for people in testing and that sort of thing. Obviously, in your experience, that wasn't upfront or prepared for you, or the doctor didn't know exactly what that was. So certainly our toxicologist who's looking at these incidents and the results, I imagine she could make recommendations along those lines so that there would be better response in the future. I think that's an excellent idea.
Okay, thank you. And we have a question here.
I'll just ask real quickly. So we've asked Darren Rye and others to provide hyperbaric oxygen therapy as a first aid it's the gold standard first aid for hydrogen sulfide toxicity, and we'd like to know how many people would be interested in having this first aid here, and how many, and is there anyone here who can help us to get this first aid on this island?
Show of hands, how many people would be interested in that?
Any first aid.
Department of Health, can you answer to that if that's possible? Have you heard of that kind of treatment or first aid?
I have to be frank with you, I'm not exactly sure what she's referring to, but we can get that information and I'll pass it on to our medical people and toxicologists, and perhaps they can get you a good answer. Maybe after you can give me a little bit more information about this.
Okay, thank you. Back to that side.
Okay, I think this is probably for Mike and maybe for Jay, I don't know. I'm curious about what happened to the monitors. We've been having such a discussion about the monitors for H2S, and we've been putting a lot of stock into that, and then here we had an emergency and the power went out, and according to the Department of Health that the power went out to the monitors at 4:30 p.m. And I wasn't here during the storm, but I'm wondering when the power went out to that whole general area. And then Jay also talked about in the discussion of getting ready for this, that you had generators go out to Ormat and everything. And was it just not a priority to have those monitors on? Because the data would be so important for us to make decisions and go on. So I'm just curious about when the power went off and the monitors became disabled and we didn't have access to that information. That's my question.
Okay, so the monitors that PGB are responsible for went offline at about 4:25, 4:30 p.m. They went offline because the electricity supply to those stations were disconnected, and that was part of the storm. And follow-up though, we are looking at improving that. So we do have backup power, but it doesn't last long. And the severity of this storm resulted in many of us, including PGB, not having electricity for several days or longer. But we're looking at putting in systems that will be able to operate even if we lose primary electrical supply.
And question from this side?
Yeah, Mike, you present yourself as so part of the community and everything is so wonderful and you do everything to protect the community. But you keep mentioning that it has to do with the permit. Well, we're within the permit. We're within the permit. There's more than a permit here, and I think it's been brought out quite a bit. It's here. It's in your heart. You know in your heart. You know what's going on. Aren't you getting tired of this? That's one of my questions. Now the other question is, to show you that you're not sincere, here it is. You did your cleanouts. You went ahead with your maintenance, and there's no monitors. You just continued business as usual, Mike. Business as usual. Come on, guys, it's time to change in this world. You know, and then you mention all these other places like the Philippines and Iceland. We're in contact with people. We get messages from them. All the people in the outlying communities got health problems. The same thing is happening all over the world with your corporations, not just yours, all the other ones. There's problems and they're not being addressed because they have permits. Wonderful health department permit. I mean, let's do it, guys. Come on, where's your heart? Come on, Mike, you're part of this community. Where's your heart? Isn't it getting old? Isn't it getting real old, this stuff? Doesn't it make you feel shitty? Is the money worth it?
I'll take that as a sign of no answer. Back to your side.
Aloha, my name's Ina Campbell and I've lived in Kapoho about 13 years. I was diagnosed with bone cancer a couple of years ago and I drive past your plant regularly. When I was in Hilo Hospital for the health department, when I was in Hilo Hospital, I asked them if the environmental considerations would be possibly a part of my diagnosis in stage 4 bone cancer. And they said, oh, no, nothing like that, and never did any kind of consideration for, I told them where I lived, I told them what my concerns were, and nothing ever happened. I also went to Honolulu to Queens, and nothing ever happened. But my question to Mike is about the fact that you said that the ORMAT, or PGB, is a good company. And I've been doing a lot of research lately about it, and according to Courthouse News, it says that a geothermal energy developer defrauded the United States of $122 million in bailout money, artificially inflating its assets to maintain the appearance that its ventures were viable. 2 former employees are suing them at this time. At the bottom of this information, named defendants are ORMAT Industries, ORMAT Technologies, ORMAT Nevada, Puna Geothermal Venture 2, etc., etc., etc. My last question is it legal, the proximity of your plant to Pahoa High School and the schools around here? From what I understand, the mileage and proximity of where the plant was based to where public schools are is against the law. Thank you.
answer that question? That was a good question.
I can address, he talked about the legal aspect of some alleged defrauding, and I am aware that there has been accusations. I'm aware that the company, Ormat, is challenging and disagreeing with those allegations. I don't have any much more details than that, but we will definitely do what we can to show and prove that we're not doing anything fraudulent.
Okay, but rather than fraudulent, I think the people want something beneficial. They want proactive measures so that this kind of stuff doesn't happen. So, although yeah, we're not at fault or we have the permit or everything, I think you guys got to get a little bit more proactive about your measures and about your safety measures and about the health and safety of this community. That's what it ultimately is about. And that question was related to corporate power and the power it has over government. So there's no real answer to that. You're not at that level, Mike, but your level is on operations and making it safe for the community. So I think that is. We have a question here.
What about the school? The kids?
Yes, I'd like to know, well, first of all, the 1 hour, this is for the Department of Health, I realize you're not with the Clean Air Branch, but the 1 hour average for hydrogen sulfide toxicity is based on the Clean Air Act, which was designed to give industry whatever they wanted so they wouldn't get sued by people who were exposed to hydrogen sulfide. Saying that the 1 hour average is what they use so they can dilute the numbers and say you weren't hit hard enough for anything to have happened. What is the possibility of the state reducing that to a more reasonable time? Because if you get hit with a blast like some of these people had, they say, oh, you got hit, oh, the hour average? Oh, nothing happened to you. You must have just tripped and fallen and hurt your head or something. So can the state do something like that?
Department of Health, please.
And your question is, what is the possibility of the state looking into more of a short-term exposure as opposed to an hour exposure, so a 5-minute exposure or something of that nature? I can certainly bring that back to the Department of Health and the Clean Air Branch to see whether that's a possibility, see if any others, oftentimes you look and see if any other states have adopted something like that as a proactive measure, or look for other bodies that have looked into that issue and established shorter term exposure limits. We did that for some other chemicals. I know it's been done before, so that's in the realm of possibility, but I'll just have to take it back and as a concern of the community, and we can take a look at it and answer more formally when we get all these answers back to the community. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Tina Bryan, and I live in Lani Puna Gardens, and my question is what I do next time, because this time I heard the jet engine sound, and I was standing on my lanai with my husband, and we called 911, and they said, do you have a real emergency? Is your house on fire? And I said, I think this is a real emergency. If something's happening at the power plant, this whole community is in danger. And she's very condescending and got off the phone. I don't know who to call. I don't know what to do to get information. The siren didn't go off. So as living in that area, I need to know, what do I do next time to find out what I do?
Anytime there's an upset, an incident, or an event at the plant, the first action that PGV takes is to call 911 and initiate the process of units responding. The second call they make is to me, whether it's during the course of the normal business day or even after hours. At that point, I'm coming into the office. So as one of you have questions, you can always call our office to get information as far as what's going on with the incident, if there's anything else, as well as to monitor what messages we put out. But definitely, we respond or react to the incidents as they occur, and as you can call our office if you're not getting the information you're looking for. And
Is that 24 hours?
well, they'll call me 24 hours. It'll take me about 10 minutes to get into the office from home. And if you call dispatch, they'll be relaying the information as far as questions or concerns that come in from the public as well.
So is that the first number that we should be calling the people in the neighborhood?
No, always call 911 for anytime you have an incident in your community. You should be calling 911 first to make sure that the services are responding.
I did. So would it be possible to educate the 911 operators that
don't become a emergency?
Definitely, I'll take that information back. Sure.
Daryl, for your information, I'll just pass this to you. It's not a question. I know of at least 10 to 15 incidences where fire, 911, civil defense, I guess that's the gamut of it, including the medical parts of fire, all have said similar things to community members. They ask for help, and what they got is, hey, you call us when you get a real problem.
And Daryl, there's one other thing. On that night of the accident, we couldn't get through the civil defense. Nobody could get through that night because you had your hands full with all kind of things, and it was just busy. I tried a bunch of times.
Yeah, we realize we have to improve the information flow, so we'll continue to work. You know, another call that I usually make after I verify units are responding is back out to those contacts that we have, such as Tom and Bob. So we're trying to find ways to make sure the community is aware of what's happening on these incidents.
Okay, and we have a question from this side.
The question about the distance between the geothermal and the schools didn't get answered, so I want to bring that up again. My other one is for you, do you frack at the geothermal? My other one is the public allowed to take to go into the geothermal and see what's going on there? And my other question is, do the workers have to sign a waiver to not discuss the going-ons at the geothermal?
All right, so if I recall the question about the distance from the schools, my understanding is that there is no issue as far as the distance from the schools to the plant. On number 2, your second question, we are not frackers. The third one, yes, we do tours. If you're interested in how the facility operates, you can always contact me. And there are no waivers that employees are required to sign to stay quiet.
On the night of the storm, you could either leave, or you could stay home and get gassed, or you could run the gauntlet. This is what you look like to us, okay? You got a gun to our head. This is for Jay. Jay, I understand there's redundancy built into the power generation system, and you have enough capacity to shut down PGV and run on generators. Why didn't you do that?
I'm going to repeat the explanation that I said earlier. When we have an approaching storm, our strategy is to try and keep the power grid on as long as possible. Part of that strategy is to bring online as much generation as we can. And that is why we ask PGV to stay online. Is there backup capacity? Yes. But in our experience through these storms, it renders the system unstable and you will have some generators trip offline. So our strategy is to keep as much generation online as possible when we're encountering a storm like this.
Was that a mistake?
We're going to go back and look at the sequence of events, like I said. Right? We're going to go back and look at things. We're always going to go through lessons learned when we go through these events. I still believe that our intent of keeping the grid on as long as possible for the public's benefit is a very good strategy.
Okay, we have a question on this side.
I was coming home right about now, and I couldn't come down Puhiki Road, and so I couldn't go down Leilani, so I roved forward and I went home, and I live like right on Puhiki Road, right out of on the other side of Laone, and I was lying down, and every night when I sleep at night, I sleep in my car. I've been around geothermal since '94. I sleep in my car because the magnetic flow and the energy now, I'm really sensitive. I had titanium staples now, just the small particles on my floor. got stuck in the tiniest bones of your body. First is the staple, and then the hammer in your ear. Well, the tiny particles got stuck in my hammer. My doctor said, Hadley said, it's from bog, but they can't prove it because there's no place like Hawaii. And so they had to go in with laser stuffingectomies and put staples in my ear. No doctors here could help me. I found a doctor in Kona just from word of mouth, and they told me to go to this doctor, and then finally he referred me to Hadley. And so now my whole head vibrates really bad with the sound, and I sleep in my car, but that night I couldn't sleep in my car. All the cars, all the wind was scary, and I was lying on my bed, and it says, okay, there's no electricity. I was lying in the dark on my bed, 1/4 mile from Geothermal. My neighbor, and this is what it normally sounds like. But that night it sounded like that. That's what it sounded like, okay? So my neighbor was, and I closed my windows. I said, I can do this. I have to. I can't, there's nothing else. I don't have a computer. My neighbor was 1/4 mile away. He called me because he had a handheld battery. My next question is, if an emergency, okay, we went to the lava meeting. They said, okay, when are you guys going to make the road for the alternative road if the lava starts coming down? They go, we're going to do it 2 weeks before it happens. And he's like, okay, what if we're all stuck? What are you going to do? We're going to bring emergency helicopter. It's going to be available if the lava cuts the road off. You know, okay, then if they're going to make us, why was there no helicopter evacuation available for jet engine
Why not?
explosion at Geothermal?
Sir, 12 hours he was unconscious and they didn't bring no helicopter for him. Only for police and firemen, is that right? No citizen gets...
Sir,
shut up,
sir.
sir. I finish up what I say. So why did they say no citizen get no helicopter?
Listen.
Because reported in newspaper 12 hours he's unconscious, and where? Where is helicopter?
The meeting's going to be over. Hey, you know what?
We would like to thank everybody. We would like to thank everybody for coming this evening, and we certainly appreciate you coming and asking your questions. I apologize to those people that did not get a chance to ask their questions, and I ask that you come and see me, and we'll get those questions passed to the audience so that they're done. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.